I'm Connor Wilson from Lacrosse Stars. Welcome to another traditional stringing tutorial. Today we're going to talk about a pocket designed by a legendary defenseman from Johns Hopkins, Brendan Shook. He was an amazing All-American takeaway guy, crazy stick skills, and he used to string his own pocket, his own traditional pocket. It was different and is different from anything else I've ever seen out there. It's well worth a try. Once you get it, it's a lot of fun. I haven't done one in a long time, but I'm bringing it back. Okay. I originally found this pocket on Lacrosse, John Weaver's site, which just was a treasure trove of stringing knowledge, different kind of pockets. It still is. You can still go to the stick tech section if you can find it. It's well worth it. There's a lot of information over there. So I believe this pocket was called the Shakedown back in the day. I guess we'll stick with that name, because frankly I couldn't come up with anything better if I tried. Here's an older sample, and this is in a really old head, old to the point that it's almost yellow, and I didn't use leathers in it, but you can see that you've got these squares running down the middle and almost squares on the side. That's created by weaving two super long pieces of cross lace back and forth between the leathers. So we're going to show you how to do this today, update this a little bit. This stick's broken, couldn't play with it if I wanted, and these synthetic leathers that I created 9 years ago just by using two pieces of top string, they're not really cutting it either. So let's try and step our game up a little bit. We're going to put it in a new Easton head, nice and stiff. Okay, defenseman could definitely use this. Right, can't get the bend. Okay. So first step, we'll throw in our sidewalls. And the big thing to remember with the sidewalls, as you can see in that demo stick, each set of running interlace that runs across is latched down to the sidewall, to a piece. So I'm going to double knot my sidewall and run that through. And that stick has 8 pieces of cross lace that run across. So I'm going to do the same thing. So that means that I need 8 sidewall loops to attach that to. So I'm going to create that here. So I'll start out in the highest hole. For this first one, I'll skip 1. And this I'm just going to do, a standard into the inside, back out, and then through. Okay, a very standard sidewall knot. I think you could really get away with a lot of different sidewall knots. I don't know that it's particularly important which sidewall knots you use. So here's a hint too. Let's count how many holes there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 15. Okay, so we've got about 18 holes. And I want to make 8. So that means I need to skip about every other hole. Just weave that down really quick. Nice and easy. All right. Outside to the smaller bottom hole. Sidewall 1, done. We'll be back. Sidewall 2's done, then we'll talk about leathers. Alright, so I've got both sidewalls in. As you can see, much like a pita pocket, they are perfectly symmetrical. They should be the same on both sides. Unlike traditional, where one might be placed 1 hole higher or 2 holes higher than on the other side, because a traditional pocket is uneven on both sides. It's asymmetrical. This is symmetrical. Okay, let's talk leathers. I'm always going to go... You know me. You know me by now. Come on. I'm always going to go with a replaceable top string. My triangle, teardrop top string. It's got a million names. Not important. What I do here, okay, here I'm going to use a double lace. Getting fancy. Okay, it's just 2 shorter pieces of scrap lace that I have laying around. Tie them together with that knot. Got the ends so that they're somewhat close together in length. And I'm going to run it through that top hole on the outside through the same hole that I went with my sidewall. So it's all in this one hole. So I ran that through the outside. Now I need to run this through the first scoop hole. Now I want to try and make sure if you're going to do a double here that it's as flat as possible. Now I run that through across the back of the scoop through the hole where I'm going to put my first leather. And as you saw in that demo stick, the older one, there's only 2 leathers in the stick. So you can use these scoop holes a little differently. And you can see that. Again, flat, flat. So when you're preparing your leather, you're going to want this shiny face on the inside of your pocket, this rough face on the outside, the back of your pocket. So you're going to fold it over like this, and these are where the holes are, and you're going to run this bottom through both holes. For presetting them, I like to leave a little gap, a little hole there. Okay, not super tight. And now I'm going to run it back through the other side. Alright. Now we've got that set up. It's ready to be put in there. Okay. So make sure that this is stayed straight and flat. And now I'm going to run this through this. So that the shiny part of the leather is going to be facing forwards to the front of the pocket. That. It looks backwards. Okay, it's because I haven't pulled it over yet. I'm going to take these 2 and feed them back through the same scoop hole. And you're all set. Your first leather is in. And this will sit, it'll pull down a little bit, you know, as it breaks in. So now we run this across the back of the head, through the 3rd scoop hole. Look at the back, totally flat. Thankfully it won't take me as long. Got my other leather, my yellow. You know, why not add a little color in there, a little fun. Yellow and a red leather, yeah, it's a little weird. That's alright. I'm doing the exact same thing, feeding it back through. And there you've got that set up. Okay. Now to finish it off, I'm just going to run through the 4th hole on the back of the scoop. And then back both of them through this top hole where I put my sidewall. So that's what it's going to look like in the front, and that's what it's going to look like in the back. And you see that these are crossed. I got to fix that first, which means I have to fix the front. Again, make sure you got it right. Take your time and find those little mistakes. In the end, you'll be glad that you did. All set. As usual, I'm just going to tie this off with that double loop knot. Just like that. pull it down, get that down as tight as you can make it. Down the bottom, I'm going to run each of these leathers through the middle like you would on a pita pocket. Okay, so you got the rough side in the back. You're going to feed that through the bottom of the head, like that, and then pull that through. Alright, we're set now. All the way through. I did end up using pliers. One thing to note, this was originally a square end for a leather, which is almost impossible to get through a hole, especially a smaller bottom hole. So I took a pair of scissors and very carefully cut it at an angle, and as you can see, that went through really easily. This is kind of the factory cut you're usually going to get. This required leathers. This required pliers to pull the leather through. This one didn't. I actually could do it by hand. Maybe it's a softer leather. Who knows? Something worth trying though. So next step is to put in the cross lace. So let's go back. So all of this running across, that's only 2 pieces of cross lace. Each starts at the top and then weaves around the other. Back and forth, back and forth. So you need 2 really long pieces of cross lace. One other thing about this too, I mean, this pocket looks like a disaster. You might be laughing at it, but I think this final product is going to come out a lot better. You know, this is using pretty much scrap string. None of the stuff that I cut was long enough. It was the first one I ever did. You know, I think it was in 2000 in Australia or 2001 when I was down there. You know, and it's not great. But if this is my first kind of shakedown, I bet you can do much better as you keep working. I know my skills have definitely improved over time, so you know, that's all I can say is just keep practicing, stick with it, and you're gonna get better. Okay, I've got my 2 preposterously long pieces of cross lace ready. So here's the head, here's a really long cross lace. Again, I'm gonna try and see if I can use this top one. Can I? Nah, it's a little tight. I'll go down 1. So I'm probably not even gonna end up using this first rung of traditional. Not a problem. So I'm going to go over 1 leather, and then I'm going to take my other piece of cross lace and bend all the way down there because it's so long. Tie the double knot in it. And now I'm going to start weaving that from the opposite side. So I will go over. You can see how they're already starting to link up. Okay, so now I'll go over again. So around once. And then I'm going to have to go around this with the other piece. So you get that. Now I'm going to pull that all the way through on both sides, which will take a while, especially when you're starting out at the beginning. And it's really good to use new cross lace. Keep each length on one side of you. That way they don't get tangled at the bottom, like what just happened to me. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I now have this pile on this side and this pile on this side, which should, hypothetically, make it a little easier to pull them through. But here's kind of your finished result. Okay, pretty basic. It's really basic. Here's from the front. Now I'm going to go the same way I was going, right? So if I'm going over this all the way through. And these are just like your middle twists on a pita pocket. And you want that tension to be the same. You want them to be equal. So you don't want it to be a case of one string going around the other. You really do want the others to be, the two strings to be pretty intertwined with each other. And that's where you're going to have to take your time. That's where things get a little slow with this pocket. If you maintain good tension, see this one doesn't have great tension. It's a little bit off. There we go. Okay, that's a little better. Now we're going to do that on the other side. So how many did we go? We did 3 there, or 4. We got to do the exact same amount on this side. Because again, just like a pita pocket, the success of this pocket is really predicated on the fact that it's completely the same on both sides. The beginning of this really is difficult because you're dealing with so much string. But as you get through it, it will become a little easier. So here's the key. We've got this. Everything's pretty tight. They're kind of wrapping around each other. That's solid. That's a solid top portion. So now you're going to attach this to the sidewall like you regularly would. You go over the sidewall. And then back over it. So basically get one of those. And as you can see, these are highly movable. They'll go all over the place. So when you're stringing and putting them in, the biggest key is making sure that it's not too tight. You have some looseness in there. You can always go back and retighten it and pull all that looseness through. But putting looseness back in is a little bit tough. So for these, you really want these loose. I'll come back when I've got a couple more done, kind of show you what I'm talking about. On yours, you can see that. I mean, these are disastrous looking. It doesn't look a lot better than what I originally had. But as these get tighter, and they have so much looseness in them, you can see that once I get this kind of finished and more aligned with where I want it to actually sit, I'm going to be able to pull that looseness out. But this is really, really simple what you're doing. You can see that. You're just going from sidewall to sidewall, lacing it up, keeping the lace as straight as you can while still making those loops, which, trust me, it's a little bit of an exercise in futility. You're going to have to work some kinks out later. It's just part of the process, at least from my experience. Maybe you got a trick. You could probably do this around a ball, actually. That might make it easier. So maybe I'll try that later. But I'll definitely tighten it up around a ball. But for now, there you go. Okay, it doesn't look pretty, but the knots are right. They're the right amount of loops. There's still some slack in the string. So we'll take it from there. I'm going to finish these up and then I'll come back. All right, I'll finish it up, more or less. Looks pretty disastrous still. So let's pull these leathers out a little bit. I'm going to loosen these leathers to the point where I think they're going to give me a decent pocket. Now we're going to have to move these down a little bit, move them around. I might even have to loosen a couple of them up, which I didn't want to have to do, but looks like I might have to do it, especially down here at the bottom. You'll see how they're pretty tight. So this is the next step. The next step is getting your leathers to a point where they're going to give you a good pocket. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring these out a little bit more. That's pretty solid. And then I'm going to tie them down, because I shouldn't have to move them again. I'm hoping. Nice little sailor's knot. Boom. Okay. So now I'm going to look at these. I still got these bottoms. They're not all the way down there. Ooh, I missed this one. I'm going to have to go back and fix that. You guys see how I missed that bottom leather isn't even in there? I'm going to have to go back and fix that before I move on. But now I'm starting to do this, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to tighten and loosen these so that it gives you a much more fluid looking, even tensioned. All my knots are kind of right. I've got the right count. I'm looking through it. It looks good. But I got to go through and tighten some of these and loosen some others. So I got to work some looseness down and work some tightness out. All right, I've gone through and I've tightened up or loosened up whatever it needed so that the tension was equal. All of these, look, they're pretty good. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're pretty darn good. They get a little sloppy at the bottom. You know, that part of the pocket hasn't been worn in at all, really hasn't been pounded. So, you know, that can create some problems. But overall, it looks really good. Okay. It's ready to go. Now you still see there's still some kinking here. I can still work through. This could probably be a little tighter. I'm going to fix that one up before I go on to the next step. But I wanted to show you what it looks like and what the next step is. Now the next step, you know, you might be looking at this head and you say, well, how is that pocket ever going to stay? You know, why that can just, you know, go like that. You know, all of a sudden you have a huge hole in your stick. You know, these are going to move around on you. And you know what? You're absolutely right. They will. So what do? We run a piece from here. You start doing loops over the leather wherever the cross lace runs into it, and then another loop underneath, and then another loop over the next place, and that track will kind of keep that in place. It really will. So let's take a piece of string. Here we go. Cut it to a desired length. That should do it. You know, a full wingspan should be more than enough to get this done. Go with the double knot. Now you can really run this from anywhere. It doesn't have to be from a top scoop hole. So what I'm going to do is run it very similar to my pita pocket, especially because I've got the floating leather kind of deal. So I'm going to run it through this sidewall, through this leather, and then wherever I want one of these pieces of cross lace to really sit, you know, and to sit permanently, I'm going to go down the leather. Let's see how we did it there. And we went over and under. So that. So I'm going to go here. And there we are. So I'm going to pick out where I want each of these to sit. I'm just going to put a little knot on top of it, a little knot below it, and it's going to keep it right there in the leather. So I'm going to come back when I've got all these situated, show you what it looks like. Alright, as you can see now, I've got one side done, and it's already looking a lot tighter, a lot more stable. You know, that side, it's a little suspect. This side, it's looking nice and tied down. So the next step is obviously to take another piece of cross lace and run it symmetrically, just like we did on the other side, to lock down. And now this side, you've already determined where your lace is going to go across, where each sort of almost shooting string that you've created with your pocket is going to go. On the red leather, you can see it, they're locked down. So now you need to be very careful to get this runner, this sort of supporting piece of string going in the exact same places as it is on the other leather. That way your pocket will stay symmetrical, and each of these cross lace sections will run across the stick at the exact same place. So just take your time, be careful. Okay, we've got that set up. So just as I did it on one side, I'm going to do it on the other side. So the first is to go over and then back under the string. Okay, I've got it where I want it. That's about it right. Now I'm going to go under, looking away from me. Under the leather, that is. And back up top. So now my top is all locked in. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the red leather, and I'm going to run this supporting string down the side. Alright, we've got both runners on. Everything is locked down and into place. It's pretty solid. Got good squares. It's pretty even on both sides. It's never as easy to string when you're on video doing it, but overall I'm pretty happy with this. I like the way it came out. There were a couple mistakes here and there. I still have some tightening to do, some adjusting, but it's pretty close to where I want it. So let's talk about shooting strings. Shooting strings are basically what the stick is all about. I mean, almost every single one of these is almost a shooting string. So you don't really need to do much. What I usually do, I will usually try and lock the top ones down, and that's just a personal preference issue. I like to lock my shooting strings down in general. I almost do it always. So with this one, just going to go through here and just run it across the back. So I don't have it tied down to anything. It's just there. And I'm just going to go through with the rest of my shooting string and just weave around that. Probably 3 times per section. So there's 1. There's 2. And the third one, I'll go over. See, all these different colors help. And this I'll go over once. Make sure that stays. So I'll go over once, and then a second. Go back to the front. Go around once. Twice. Third time's a charm. Pull through. And there's your top shooting string. Again, it's just kind of spirals on top of spirals. It's nothing particularly exciting, and it doesn't need to be. Like I said, if you get the tension right with the stick in general, you're not going to have to worry about your shooting strings quite as much, because each of these sections of cross lace really does act like its own shooting string. So as long as you have the tension right, it's almost like having 8 shooting strings running across your leathers, and that's it. Except they're a lot more stable because it's all cross lace and it's all one piece and it all interacts with itself. So there's our top. You can see it more in the back than you can in the front. Now I'm going to do that same thing with 2 more cloth shooting strings, so on this one and this one. I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, so I actually only ended up putting in 2 shooting strings. And this thing really actually throws pretty nicely. I'm going to go out and play a little wall ball with it, but upon initial reaction, and the ball travels very nicely, very smoothly along the track. Doesn't really go side to side too much, so I think it's going to turn out well. You get the same deal. You can see the shooting string heavy in the back, light in the front. Okay? All of these are going to kind of settle in, and as I play wall ball with it, I got to push them together and make sure that everything is staying on track as the pocket breaks in. But once you start to get those notches around the leathers, it's really not going to move. The stick is going to stay there. You can always go through and retighten some stuff. But for the most part, it's a great pocket. It's great. I mean, if you like a high pocket, it really sits up there as a defenseman nicely when you're kind of walking the dog. It's a great stick. I've been able to shoot with it in the past, so I'm hoping this one works out. Maybe it'll be my my midfield and attack stick as well. So thanks for watching. If you have questions, of course, drop them in the comments. We'll try and get to them. I'm sure that this is bound to create a little bit of interest. That's the Shook Shakedown. Can't think of a better name for it. One heck of a player. Probably going to hate the fact that these are Maryland colors. He was a Hopkins guy. So, well, sorry, Brendan. My fault. Next time I'll go with the hot blue and black and white, red and yellow. That was all I had left. What are you going to do? Plus it matches the sweatshirt a little bit. New Orleans Lacrosse tournament. Wonderful. All right, have a good week, and we'll see you back here next week for another traditional Thursday. I don't know if it'll be as creative as this, but